This gospel reading we have for our gathering today is the one given for this day in ordinary time, and it's an example that we see play out in many different passages of the Gospels, but fitting for us in our reflections today because we have Jesus in a debate about the law. So as we see in every case, people confront Jesus with all kinds of aspects of the law, and of course it's not a fair fight, so they lose every time. But I think that what we have to take away from this ongoing debate with Jesus and Pharisees and scribes and various people over the law is that the response of Jesus is usually not so much that you're wrong, but rather you just missed the point. They don't realize what is really going on. So Jesus pushes them. So we can come away seeing that Jesus kind of won the day, but also missed the point. Jesus will say in other places that he has not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law. So everything that Jesus is doing is meant to help us grasp the point. So for our reflection tonight, there are two aspects of what I believe Jesus intends, what I believe the point is in today's passage and in many others. The first part of the point that they often miss is that the law has to be focused on the people who will benefit from it. So that Jesus is highlighting for them that the real focus that they need is on fulfilling their obligations to other people. So in today's passage, he brings up the one commandment about honoring your father and mother and criticizing them for the ways that they seem to twist things around and to take what seems to be good and let it lead them away from what is greater. So it gives us this strange word to us, korban, which was a commitment of certain amount of money to the temple, a seemingly good thing. But they would kind of use that promise of money dedicated to the temple as a way to hold on to their money a little bit longer. And it caused them to neglect the needs of their own family. So Jesus is challenging them to look beyond and to see the good of the people that are involved, a basic point. This is also something captured very beautifully in the part of the story of creation that we have today. As we come to the conclusion of several days of hearing the story of creation, we are given the creation of man and woman and told that what sets them apart from everyone else is that they are made in the image and likeness of God. So one of the ways to understand the law as God intends it is to help the one part of creation, men and women, fulfill their purpose. To actually live in such a way that their lives are a reflection of the image and likeness of God. A recognition that we struggle to live this out. And so we have the law of God that provides parameters for us. A kind of safeguard to know that we are walking the path of God, walking with God to live as we were made to live in this image and likeness of God. So that the focus always has to be on what does it mean to be truly human. So Jesus is always drawing people in these debates to recognize the needs of the people around them. So, for example, in other debates where they question Jesus about the law, he tells them that the law that I'm really looking for is give bread to the hungry, shelter the homeless. So he points our attention to the needs of people around us and asks us to use our resources and our ability for the good of those people. So it's an improvement, a greater understanding of the law, instead of the laws they're debating, which were about the right kind of purity in their worship, the kind of washing of their hands and the vessels and all the things that they used as a symbol of their purity before God. Jesus pushes them to go deeper and recognize that the service of neighbor is a greater law. The practice of charity is a greater law. But that brings me to my second point. Not only does Jesus intend us to see that the law of charity is a step closer, but he says there's an even deeper point. That the real understanding that Jesus wants for them is not about their behavior at all, but rather a recognition that when it comes to all of the laws that they were debating about, the most important aspect that they need to now recognize is Jesus himself. That the greatest understanding of the law, the fulfillment of the law that Jesus talks about, is not practicing it more perfectly, but it's about recognizing who Jesus is. That because Jesus has come, because Jesus is God in the flesh, that same Creator that made man and woman in his image and likeness is now present in the flesh. The one who has power over the law, the one who is greater than the law, is now in their midst, and his presence has power to redeem and transform. So that what he is ultimately asking for is faith. A faith that believes grace is now active. And it is that captures most perfectly what Jesus intends. Pope Benedict had a beautiful reflection on this reality. He talks about people moving away from the laws of ritual purity that they talked about. But he says that too often what happens is that people hear part of what Jesus says, and they say, well, we're supposed to live now a moral law that says give bread to the hungry, shelter the homeless. So what we end up doing is we replace one law with another law. But that the point is not how we live out the law at all, but rather how well we allow Christ to enter into our lives and into our hearts. How we live in such a way that our faith reflects a trust in our loving Father. That the only way that we can truly fulfill what it means to be made in the image and likeness of God is through faith. So the law that guides the way we act is important only to the degree that it helps us grow in faith. And so if we move from one set of laws to another set of laws, and the entire time we are focused on our human identity according to our behavior, then we miss the point. That our behavior has to reflect the deeper truth of who we are. The deeper truth that can only be discovered in recognizing who Jesus is. So in all of these debates about the law, where Jesus seems to say, you missed the point, he says it because what he wants most is that they recognize who he is. And that when he talks about the poor and the lonely getting it before the scholars and scribes, is because they see Jesus for who he really is. And they respond to who Jesus is with the kind of acts of faith that often lead to their healing. And so we come tonight to recognize the privilege that we have of being able to connect the work we do, your service to the law, with your faith. It's what brings you to celebrate together this profession in the light of the Holy Spirit that we acknowledge. And so my prayer for you this evening is that you will continue to purify your practice of the law in your own life and in your care for others, that you will see in the opportunities you have a way to help somebody live out the reality of their image and likeness of God, but that we never stop there, that we never stop at just trying to behave better, to practice better, but rather that we take Jesus for what he intends, the penetrating into our hearts and into our lives, so that we see every opportunity we have to share our life, our talent, our profession with who Jesus is as a way to recognize that he calls us to faith. that what he most wants for each one of us is the transformation of our hearts and of our lives to respond to him with the kind of faith that gives life, the kind of faith that allows for the fulfillment of the law, the kind of faith that helps us truly live the way we were made, in the image and likeness of God.